board meeting of the Amherst Area School District is held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. This meeting is being held to review the agenda for the regular monthly board meeting that will be held on Wednesday, April 20th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium. So I believe that we have 3 State Street students here for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is that correct? Okay, you can come forward now. And can everybody else please rise? So you can step up to the mic and you 3 can start and we'll follow you. Or wherever, it's fine. Thank you very much for coming tonight. This meeting is being recorded for district purposes. It is or may be published in part or in its entirety on the district's website without the express permission of meeting participants. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Fisher?
Here.
Mrs. Kehoe?
Here.
Mr. Carpenter? Mr. Zacci?
Here.
Mrs. Fitzko?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Keeber?
Here.
Mrs. Ramasco?
Here.
Not a present.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cephas is not present as well.
Oh, Mr. Cephas.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have
That's
my roll
okay.
call.
Can I have the sunshine law, please?
The Board of School Directors held an executive session on Wednesday, April 12th to discuss personnel matters and matters subject to attorney-client privilege and other confidentiality laws.
Thank you. We have no amendments to the agenda or approval for tonight. And we are going to now recognize Danielle Carpenter and Lily Carpenter. So you may come forward up to the mic here.
Danielle Carpenter currently has 2 art pieces being shown at the Merrick Art Gallery for the Beaver County High School Senior Art Competition. It's located in New Brighton. And she has also been awarded several scholarships, considerable scholarships at Carlow University for next year. Congratulations. And Lily Carpenter. She was invited to the U.S. Naval Academy STEM program. She's one of 280 students invited out of roughly 5,000 applications. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, so we will now move on. Mr. King is going to be doing a presentation for us this evening.
Okay, thank you. If you guys want to move down in the audience, it's up to you, or you could stay up there if it's easier to see. You could come down. We also have Christy McCluskey with us. She is the sales rep from McGraw-Hill. I'm going to start by going over the actual process of how we piloted the books, and then she'll talk about the pricing. The pricing for both the mathematics and the ELA series are both for 5 years. We started the process in October, or last October, and we had 2 presentations. One was from McGraw-Hill and one was from Houghton Mifflin. And then we actually had teachers request to see a company called Sabas, which is our old Pearson series. And then what we did, we had them fill out a survey of the different things they would like to see. Could you hold the survey up real quick? Basically, there's a lot of different responses, but the overwhelming thing that all the teachers said, especially when I ran their grade level and department meetings, is they need a series with a strong phonics program, and they wanted the ability to supplement, on top of the curriculum we're purchasing. So with that in mind, when they started to look at the different series, that's why McGraw-Hill eventually became their choice. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so I just mentioned that we had the 3 series, the Houghton Mifflin, the McGraw-Hill, and the Sabas, which is our old Envision series. And those were the 3 series that they voted or that they were asked to vote on after they piloted. They had samples, online samples, as well as consumables. As far as the results go, we had 39 teachers vote. What I did is I put out a Microsoft form, and then after we piloted, and I had 2 or 3 grade level meetings to iron out what types of things they wanted and what they were looking for. I actually had the form sent out and told them, whatever series got the most votes from the teachers was going to be the series that we were going to propose to the board for purchasing. The teachers really appreciated that, and they said that we're glad the administration gave us each a voice in this. We had all the class, your regular ed grade level teachers vote, as well as your special education, including autistic support and life skills. So if you see your ELA series results, Houghton Mifflin received 2 votes. McGraw-Hill received 33 votes, and Sabas received 4 votes. For the mathematics series results, Houghton Mifflin received 1 vote, McGraw-Hill received 28 votes, and Sabas received 10 votes. Votes per building, this is just, it shows how many teachers per each building participated. 18 from economy, 14 from Highland, 6 from state, and 1 from the middle school, because the ELA series goes up to 6th grade. And then right here we have by grade level, the majority of the teachers did vote. 4 in kindergarten, 8 in first, 6 in second, 4 in third and fourth, 5 in, or 6 and 5, and 6, or 1 and 6, and then 6 for your special ed and focus period teachers, which are your old Title I reading specialists. So your overall vote for the ELA series, you had McGraw-Hill with 33, Houghton Mifflin with 2, and Sabas with 4. And the results from, I'm sorry, wait a second. That should be for, that's wrong. That should be for the mathematics series. That's wrong at the top. It should be Houghton Mifflin 1, this is for mathematics, McGraw-Hill 28, and Sabas 10. I apologize for that. Does anybody have any questions on the process itself? Okay, could you pull up the quotes, and then I'll have Christy speak to it real quick? From October until about 3 weeks ago. And then basically your curriculum council pilots it, and then they would share the information with your other teachers. So they would have had it the whole time. They would have had the codes and all the resources. Okay.
Thanks, Barry. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Christy McCluskey. I'm a sales representative from McGraw-Hill. Thanks for having me. I can walk you through the quote. As Barry mentioned, this is the ELA one, which is for a 5-year commitment. So I don't know if you want to scroll down and I can kind of, do you want me to go through each grade level a little bit? Scroll down and keep going until you get to kindergarten. So kindergarten is one grade level that comes as a complete system. So when I say system, that means all of the materials for the kindergarten teacher is embedded into that particular system. There are also materials for 22 students embedded into each one of those systems. With all grade levels K through 6, they do have a reading writing companion that is a consumable item. That consumable item will be shipped out every 5 years. At this time next year, I'll be emailing Barry and say, you know, here are the numbers of what you purchased. Do you want to move those items around? And then as you go through, these are just additional materials that the kindergarten teachers would need to have access to every single one of the components. I don't know if you want to keep going down to first grade. First grade through 6th grade is a little bit different. It's kind of a la carte. So you're going to see comprehensive packages for 1st grade through 6th grade. What these entail is they have a literature anthology, the consumable for 5 years, and then also digital for 5 years. And then there are big books, teachers' editions, leveled readers, assessments, and other manipulatives. Same kind of thing with 2nd grade. 2nd grade through 6th grade is really the same. Comprehensive packages, teacher editions, teacher digital, some manipulatives, leveled readers, and assessments. Any questions on the ELA reading? Okay, I guess go to the math. So again, this is my math on 2018. This is another 5-year commitment, very similar to the reading. You can go down to kindergarten. And for K through 5, it's going to be the same type of materials. There's a volume 1 and a volume 2 for the students, which are consumable, so those will be automatically shipped out. Teacher edition, volume 1, volume 2, and access to the digital pieces for the teachers. So not as many components with the math as there is for the ELA. Any questions?
Thank you. My couple comments for the Board of Education as a reminder would be, obviously I do support, Mr. King and the teachers who voted in this fashion. I know it was a lot of good discussion in and around Wood Series, and it's a big decision. Keep in mind that we will be using grant funding to be able to purchase this. And the good news, as he had indicated, is this total price includes 5 years worth of materials. So I think that's really important. In addition to that, I asked Mr. King, and he worked with the book rep to try to increase the number of teacher materials and teacher manuals to ensure that all of our supplemental teachers, not just grade level teachers, like Title I teachers, special ed teachers, those folks would all have access to these materials, which I think is really important, and that we tried to increase a couple of the key manipulatives to be able to use with the kids. So based upon that, I would just say that if you have any questions, together we'll try to answer those, but I do support the recommendation of the teachers and committee and Mr. King as bringing this to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, this is paid out of our ESSER's 20% set aside, which I have budgeted for this $430,000, which we're going to spend $280,000, so we have $150,000 left over to buy interventions, and that's really another component that the teachers are really excited about.
I think that's key, Mr. King. As we've said, always whenever you get one of these series, it's important to know no matter how strong they may be, there's going to be a need for some supplemental materials. So giving an opportunity for teachers to work with this next year and then figure out what type of supplementals would best suit and complement this program, I think is important.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We now have a presentation from Ms. Beth Ann Ith for the budget Draft 3 updates.
Good evening, Madam President and the Board. I'm pleased to be able to present Draft 3 of our general fund budget for 2022-2023 school district year. So the first page is our summary. We had some reduction in expenditures and a small increase in revenues. Also on this, you'll notice that there's a projected carry forward from 21-22, and I just want to emphasize that that is an estimate and it's a projected figure. We're hoping that, you know, that number will come in and we'll be able to use that along with our other fund balance, 711,630, and that allows us to balance the budget without raising taxes. That being said, when the ESSER money does depart, 23-24, we drop from 8.2 to 892,000. I do recommend that we raise taxes. Total expenditures are 53,121,066. Per our meeting last Thursday, I was asked to break out the purchased services and have charter schools and transportation as a separate piece of the pie. And so you'll notice that 19% is to charter schools, 7% is our transportation budget moving forward. 51% is salaries and benefits, and then purchase services fall in at 7%. Any questions? So the expenditure change is a reduction of $400,786. Those reductions were in interest and loan and lease purchases. Our lease is over, so I was budgeting for the interest for that and in the draft 2, and we don't have that next year. Same thing with the lease payment. So those were 2 nice reductions. The capital new equipment, we had an increase of $25,000 in case we decide to get bag scanners. We wanted to make sure that that was in the budget. And then the interest on our bonds also was reduced from what was budgeted. And then I went over, before Amy left for break, I went over the special ed budget with her, and we found some, you know, a small difference there. So the total reduction is $400,786. Any questions?
The one addition there, the bag scanner, this was something we did write a grant for. Unfortunately, no school district in the area received it. Primarily went to churches and religious areas, what we saw from the grant awardees. So we are building that bag scanner that it has been recommended to us to be able to use for the high school from Chief DeLuca. If we need more than one, then obviously we would try to look at a grant in the future for that, write another grant, but we did include this in the budget.
Total revenues are $52,199,724. 52% of that is local, 40% is state, and 8% is federal. We had a slight increase of $51,506 in revenues. Pre-K counts, we had budgeted $700,000, but that grant is $875,000. Transportation and non-public transportation, I was just recently sent our subsidy amount, significantly lower than what I had budgeted. We're going to look into that. We're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. It was a per pupil situation where we had dropped, and so we're going to dig into that and see why that drop occurred, if it did indeed occur. So hopefully there'll be some movement there. And then the state reimbursement, the bond payments came in a little bit lower, or a little bit higher, excuse me. The reimbursement came in a little bit higher at $36,327. So the total was $51,506. We were sitting pretty good without that transportation, but it's better to know than to be surprised on the other end of it. Any questions? Projections. So the fund balance, this is just a, the line draft that we used last time, showing the fund balance at $3 if we decide to not increase taxes. The three-year projection with no tax increase, the numbers speak for themselves. You'll see that the 2023, 24, and 24-25, the revenue declines quickly because of that ESSER federal funding departing. And then the next is if you were to do a tax increase each year, keep in mind that the assessment will have a neutral year that you can't increase taxes. So we'll have to keep track of that and make sure that we're aware of that, of when that's going to be, and be prepared for that. Any questions on those?
I just had a comment for the board. So obviously that's a conservative number on the where we're going to push forward from the current year. I mean, obviously that's not official. However, I appreciate your work on that and giving that board that the opportunity to consider that as they make this decision. So it does look like you would have the ability, as she had indicated, that if you wanted to do that, she's pretty confident in that number. That number actually might be better, we hope. In other words, it might not be down to just $3. And as I've always said, in the next year's budget, just like this year and the year before that, our goal is to budget for things, but doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend every single dollar. So it could be a little better picture than that, but I think it's important that you had the opportunity and understood what was in front of you, that if you wanted to do that, that's where we're at. So I just want to say, when you see $3, it's kind of, that's conservative within 2 years, what we're going to actually bring in and what we may come in under the following year if we can hold tight. Finally, though, I do want to make mention that when you look at these projections going out, especially with the revenue drops, from the sustained positions that we are going to need to sustain a majority of those that we're using for ESSER dollars, that's a significant decrease in revenue, not to mention some unknowns with regards to some of those areas that you asked to be broken out, charter school payments, etc. So we still have a lot of work to go, and we hope that those conservative numbers will continue to increase on our pushover from this year and start to build a fund balance back up. Even if we have to use it in future years, we want to try to build a fund balance up. We'll continue to look at this as we progress. However, on our tentative timeline, as was discussed with you, we would be looking for you folks to vote on the proposed final budget, which, keep in mind, if you do vote on that, you would need to indicate and let us know whether or not you wanted that initial one to include taxes or not include taxes. However, that's not final. The final is the only final, so it is subject to change. It's important for the public to know that and the board to know that. However, to stay on the general timeline, when we hit that item, well, either now or when we hit the item in the agenda, if we could get some feedback from the board on what you would like to be placed in there at this given point. Doesn't mean it's final, because it's not. We would have till May 18th. Technically, we have till June, but in our plan, we were trying to get this done for May 18th. There's some other possible savings here and there, and we'll continue to look at this and try to find those items and try to get a clearer picture on carryover as time goes on, but I think this sort of gives you a general picture of where you're at the present time. Questions for us?
What's the tax increase amount that's being on here?
The tax increase,
With tax increases, what's the percent of the increase you're counting on?
the 3.837 of this year. About
Is that-
990,000.
Is this proposed for every year, that 3%, or just
I
this year and then?
did, yeah, I did put it in each year because I didn't extend it out over 6 years or 5 years. That's why I dropped it down to the 3 years.
Did you say you did or didn't put it in there? Just say it one more time.
I did put it in each year.
Okay.
So your projection includes 3.8% every year for the next 3 years?
That's what I did for my
I'm
projection.
just asking to clear that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then what year is the assessment? Do we know that yet?
We should be seeing that information at the end of this year. So it should affect our 23-24 budget. And we'll have a better picture of what that is when they,
End of the year as of
Release it.
December or end of the school year?
end of year is November.
Okay.
Didn't they say after that assessment comes in that there was going to be a realignment of the millage? So
There's-
that no school district was getting a windfall?
Right, right. There's a realignment of millage, and so they call it a revenue neutral year. So you can't raise taxes that year when they're recalibrating the millage. Now, the year following an assessment, you can go as high as 10% increase. There's a checkbox on the AFR, on the report, so that they allow you to go above the index. So that's how it is, how it processes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? So then the final page, what's next? We're going to continue to analyze and adjust budget drafts, monitor staffing changes, closely follow this charter school expense, the fuel costs, local and state revenues, and continue to work on that projected surplus 21-22, and keep looking at that. Each month that goes by gives me a better picture of what that number could be. Updates will be provided as needed at monthly meetings. Hope is to adopt a proposed final budget April 20th and then pass the final budget at the regular meeting on May 18th. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I do have one question.
Yeah.
A projected surplus for this current school year, do we have any idea, a ballpark, what they could be? I haven't heard the word surplus in a very long time.
Yeah, if you
It's
look
exciting.
if you look at the second page in, you'll see that there's a value. I didn't use the word surplus. I used the word carry forward. But it's listed on there in the balancing of it.
1.2
Yes,
forward, carry forward from 21-22.
correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Any other questions?
I'm assuming if we have questions after the fact, we can all submit those if we have anything and send those to you. Okay. Just so we all have a chance to process it all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions tonight? At this time, district residents may come forward on agenda items only for public comment. Each person must state their first and last name and address prior to speaking. Each resident will be allowed 3 minutes and can speak only once. This period for public comment prior to the standing committee reports will be limited to 1/2 hour. Although not required, board members desiring to address questions or concerns may do so after the residents' comments, questions, or at the conclusion of the committee reports. There will be an opportunity for residents to comment on any business relevant to the Amber Dairy School District under old and new business at the end of the meeting. Do you have anybody who wishes to speak tonight regarding agenda items? You can come forward. Hi.
Hi. So you want my first and last name?
Yes.
Micah Kwalik, and you want my address? 1719 Dust Avenue, Cambridge. So I'm talking about the basketball coach opening. I play basketball for the high school team, and I have for the past 2 years, my sophomore and junior year. There's been a lot of inconsistency in the coaching areas, but there has been one consistency, and that's been the assistant coach, Matt Puppich, who I believe is running for head coach as well. And he's helped me propel my game and the games of other people to new levels that we didn't know we could reach. And I feel like if he were head coach, he could bring a lot more success to a program that is struggling to find its footing with the lack of head coaching consistency. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight? Hi.
Hello. This is also about the coaching situation for basketball. We would just, love Coach Matt Puppich as our head coach. He's been coaching my grade, my sophomore class, since 7th grade basketball. We all love him and respect him. He's like an older brother to us. And we just think that, we all respect him. We think he would truly be a great position for his head coaching job. Thank you.
Can you say your name and address?
Oh, I'm Alec Fustich. You mean house address?
You could just,
Yeah,
just for the record.
1210 Highland Avenue.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else like to come forward this evening?
I don't see anybody. Got good vision.
All right. Under legislative action for this meeting, under education and technology, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Zachi.
Yes, items 1 through 6 are various agreements. 2 through 6 are student agreements for discipline. Number 1 is a settlement agreement. And then for number 7, it's recommended to ratify the Amherst Area Middle School Detention Program. The after-school program will be held every week in 2-hour increments as an alternative to out-of-school suspension. Total cost of 7 sessions for 14 hours will be $710.36. All costs incurred will be paid from the high school detention and school budget.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, motion, I'm sorry.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Any board discussion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Zachi?
Yes.
Ms. Fitzko?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keeper?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramasco?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under personnel and salary schedule labor relations, Mr. Cephas and Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. We're going to go through the items fairly quickly. Number 1 is the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit Board of Directors. We are recommending Mrs. Ramasco be appointed as the representative to serve for a 3-year term, commenced July 1 of 2022. Any discussion? Number 2 is an FMLA. It's recommended that this employee get to take a leave of absence under board policy, and that will be from beginning March 14th, 2022. Any discussion? Number 3 is a retirement. Recommended to approve the resignation due to retirement of Mrs. Janet Gaffney from her position of the Food Service Director. That'll be effective June 30th, 2022 with regret. Any discussion? Number 4 is a resignation. It's recommended to ratify the resignation of Mrs. Karen DeMarco from her position as the Secondary Science Department Head, effective March 15th, 2022, also with regret. Any discussion? Number 5 is posted positions. There's some department heads and building heads. It's recommended to approve the following individuals who have applied for the specified posted positions for the 2021-22 school year, and they will be approved at the salary designated and the negotiated agreement. Secondary heads under science, Georgia Berlamas and Paul Haladio. Any discussion on that? Number 6, Middle School Detention Program. It is recommended to ratify Amy Braun as the Middle School Detention Program Supervisor. The detention program will be held for 1 2-hour session every other week. Mrs. Braun will be compensated at the rate as pay of her per collective bargaining agreement. Any discussion? Number 7, we have a couple coaches. We're looking to approve softball Thomas Smith as a volunteer coach, and Hannah Smith as the head middle school coach. Price is listed. And number 2 is boys tennis. Georgia Barlamas would be the head coach, and Megan Recipio as the assistant. Price is listed. Any discussion? There's number 8 is posted positions, clubs, and activities. It's recommended the following individual who have applied for a specified posted position for 2021-22 school year be approved at the rate per the collective bargaining agreement, provided the school year allows and sponsors are able to hold activities as normal. Unlisted is the JROTC Cadet Club at the salary listed. Any discussion on that one? Number 9, the School Resource Officer Agreement will be recommended to approve an agreement between the Ambridge Area Police Department and the Ambridge Area School District. It will provide 1 uniform school resource officer at the middle school at a cost not to exceed $20,266.24 for the SRO services from April 20th through June 2nd. Is there any discussion on that? 10 will be the food service worker. It's recommended to hire Mr. Kenneth Carlisle Jr. to fill the utility position at the high school food service department as per the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. Pending receipt of current clearances, satisfactory drug screening, TB testing, and responses from current or former employees to Act 168 screening. Any discussion on that one? 11, number 11 is a tutoring item. Recommended to ratify the following teachers for tutoring at all grade levels to address the learning gaps due to COVID-19. The teachers will be paid 1.5 hours per day at the contracted rate. This is funded through the ESSER's 3 grant. Miss Amy Wass at Highland, Jennifer Shannon at Highland, Thomas McKelvey, also Highland. Any discussion on that one? Number 12, the Common Assessment Authors is recommended to approve the following individuals to serve as the Common Assessment Authors for the 2021-22 school year, who develop 3 common assessments. Teachers will be compensated at the rate of pay as per the collective bargaining agreement. Ms. Karen DeMarco, Science, will be paid 10 hours, and Mr. Eric Harbison, also Science, to be paid 5 hours. Any discussion on that? So I do have a quick question on that. I see we're approving Mrs. DeMarco's resignation, but then also approving her to be paid these 10 hours. Has her work already been, she's already done it?
Yeah, in the beginning of the year, they were hired to do, basically it takes about 5 hours to do 3 of the common assessments. She was able to complete 2 of the common assessments, so she'd be paid 10. There's 1 common assessment left, and this individual will be taking that on, so we had to split up the 10 and 5.
Okay. Any other discussion? That's all for discussion, so I will make a motion to approve items 1 through 12 this evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Zachary?
Yes.
Ms. Fitzko?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keeber?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramasco?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Moving on to committee reports, which are non-voting agenda items. Under Education and Technology, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Zachi.
Yes, based on the presentations by Mr. King, it's recommended to approve the adoption of the math series for grades K through 5. The total cost is on the bids for the school years 22-23 through 26-27. It's also recommended to approve the reading series, grades K through 6. Again, the cost is on the bids for the 22-23 through 26-27 school years. The Transmath intervention materials, it's recommended to approve the purchase of the materials focused on meeting the needs of students with disabilities in learning support math classes, grades 6 through 8, and Algebra 1A and 1B at the high school. Cost is $15,229.50 for resources and $1,800 for 1 day of training to be purchased using ESSER funds. Any questions?
Thank you. Under Finance and Budget and Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Carpenter and Mr. Keeber.
Thank you, Madam President. Under number 1, proposed final budget for the 2022-23 school year, it is recommended to approve the proposed final general operating fund budget for the 22-23 fiscal year with expenditures of, I guess we'll fill in the blank. The proposed final budget is on display for public inspection at the administration office and online on our website. Discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay then? That's what we'll do? We'll just bubble in
Well, we have to put a number in there. So it was, we were given two options. So obviously you have to decide what's going to go there. I'll just give you my opinion. I haven't seen our line by line budget yet, so I'm not ready to vote on any budget, no matter what it is. Proposed final, ultimate, whatever you want to call it. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I really can't. The preliminary budget's a starting point. That's something a little bit different, but this final one, I know it can be changed moving forward, but I still think there's a lot of work to be done. So if there's consensus to add a number in there, so be it. But I will not be voting to pass a final budget next week.
Other board discussion?
I just have a general question about our capital improvement fund. I don't know that I've heard those numbers in quite some time. Can someone give us an update on how much is in that account?
1.7
Million?
Yes.
I have a question. Is there a timeline that has to be met as far as having a proposed budget passed before we get to the final budget? There is.
There is. We
I
need,
thought so, but
no,
if you could clarify, that'd be great.
so the action that you see embodied in this motion is what authorizes and directs the board secretary and the business office to make the legal advertisement, which announces to the world that the proposed budget is in a form that is available for public inspection, and that needs to be on display, off the top of my head, I think at least 14 days, although it may be slightly more, slightly less. Some time before you actually take the vote. So you have to advertise the availability of the budget, and that's a precursor to your voting. The budget must be adopted no later than the last day of your fiscal year, which is June 30th. You have the added challenge of having a bid, right, that happens in early June. And so that's a factor that we try to solve for by pushing up your final consideration of the final budget, if that's possible, if you're prepared to do so, because any big changes obviously would have impacts on the bid and also on other personnel things, among other things. Right? But that's one category that can be affected.
Any other comments? So you're asking that we provide a number tonight to fill in that blank? Is that
What
I'm
I'm
understanding?
basically saying is that if we wanted to stay on the same timeline to the point that was stated earlier, if you don't want to stay on that timeline, then she just indicated to you what you would need to do. You'd have to pass that at some point. I thought we were using around 20 odd days. I'd have to look it up. Exactly. From when you pass it before you can pass the final. You have to do all that before June 30th, obviously, our June board meetings. We had some discussion about June board
It
meetings.
is 20.
It's 20,
20
right?
days. 20.
So you have to have 20 days in between them, and you have to advertise for that time. So my opinion is that, that's not final, and you can continue to work on it if you want to. We will continue to work on it in some regards, but it gives you an idea at this given point as compared to draft 2, where you thought you had no other choice to balance it but to raise taxes. You don't. As I indicated, that is conservative in nature, which means that the rollover could be higher. It doesn't mean we're going to spend every thing out of the 22-23 budget. You can keep nickeling that down if you want. We can do that too. As we continue to do that in 22-23, you're just going to make that budget tighter and tighter and tighter, which will show that you would have more money left over, but also not allow for a lot of opportunity if something came up that was unexpected. Where are you going to come with that money? And when you don't have a lot of money in a fund balance and limited money in a capital project amount, you're kind of off operating $50-some million on a very short margin of error. My recommendation to you is continue to be conservative. By conservative, that means you budget for things in case they may come up in that budget. That doesn't mean that we're going to spend them. I think that's been shown to the best of our ability, of course, the last couple of years where we're coming in under budget. That's to be expected and hopeful, but you never know what might happen in future years. So if you don't do that, then I guess we just need a new, if there's not 5 members who are willing to do that, then we need a new time frame. What is going to be the next time frame? And what are you looking for us additionally to do? Maybe it's just more time for yourselves. Maybe it's you ask us to continue to do that, which is fine.
I think personally speaking, I want to be able to stick obviously to the timeline that needs to be done. However, I feel like I need a little bit of time to personally process, but so I guess I'm just a little bit confused on how we proceed if we don't have it, like
So if you don't, you have May 11th, I think, is the May meeting, so you'd have to go 20 days from there and see where you hit in June. I think June. We have to pull it up.
I guess I'm asking maybe not to necessarily take it off of the agenda for next week, but can this still be on here without 5 of us giving you a number? Do you know what I mean? Because it sounds like no one's really speaking
Well,
up
I
saying
think
they
that
know
when
which
you
number
put,
to.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I just didn't want to forget what I was going to say, which is, I think you could do that, but I think in due diligence, in my opinion, when you're posting that to the public 24 hours, you should
Right.
probably have a number in there. That would be my opinion. Just
Right.
So the question before us right now is what number are we using? Are we just adding the expenditure number?
to me, and that's what it's asking for in this motion. So I would say to the solicitor too, you know, at some point in the final, I think it does ask what the current millage rate is and those types of things. So
Yeah.
what I'm
so-
saying is if you put this, what I'm saying is if you put this expenditure in there and you advertise as such, quite frankly, you're not committing to a tax increase by draft 3. You're not committing to it. You're not saying you can't either, but you're not committing to it. If you were looking at draft 2, in my opinion, you sort of were by putting that in there, committing to a tax increase, and now you're not. So I think it gives you the flexibility, from my opinion, to decide still whether if you do want to raise taxes, if you don't, by approving that number, and we could still continue. You could make suggestions. Anyone could, not you personally, anyone can make suggestions as we're going through this, trying to tighten it up.
So again, does the board, I'm only one person, so, I mean, I made what I feel clear, but if the will of the board is to put the $53,121,066 in, then that's the number that needs to go in there. If that's the will of the board who's here right now. Is that what is the consensus of the board?
Well, the number that goes in there for the preliminary isn't necessarily the final number for the final budget. It can be lower, it just can't be higher.
Right.
It's true. So again, is there 5 people who want to put that number in that blank?
So I have a question. So we're talking about the 53,121 in draft 3, which is only, if I'm understanding correctly, about 400,000 less than draft 2. Is that correct? Am I understanding this correctly? Okay. So if we have the carry, can you just walk me through this a little bit? If we have the carry forward that is on here, and that's the 400,000, if there's 400,000 less there, where's the rest? Does that make sense?
711 from the remaining fund balance you currently have.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Which would leave you a fund balance, like I said, of 3, but we're not trying to be dramatic. I think we're going to come in, I know I won't put Beth Ann on that, but I'm hopeful that we'll come in even a little better than the 1.2, and that's also assuming that we spend every dollar in the following year. You understand what I mean? Which is not shown the trend. That being said, there are some major things that are outside of our control that could cause, even if we come in under in some places, charters could go significantly up. That being said, we did budget more in there. We definitely did that by quite a bit.
If that hasn't been the trend that we spend every dollar, do we have a trend of percentage that we've been under the last 3 to 5 years? Do we know that number yet?
The last 5 years have not been under.
The last 5 years have not. The last 2, you know that we were 2.1, and she's projecting a minimum of 1.2.
Prior to that, it came in at a deficit quite a few years. It came under.
Prior to that, it came in
Prior
as
to
a
that, it
deficit.
came in as a deficit. They had lower than budgeted revenues and higher than budgeted expenditures. So it was on both ends.
For a significant amount of years, is my understanding.
Quite a few years, yes. That
So-
line chart shows you.
Right. You can see it.
Yes.
Yeah. So either way, the expenditures are the same it's the same number, $53,121,066.
Right, and if we find something additional as she continues to come through this, like she found 400 there,
Right.
it may come down. She might find something that increases that amount, and then we'd have to find somewhere else to lower it, hopefully. You understand what I mean? But generally speaking,
But you're fairly confident that that will not go up.
What will not go?
The expenditures,
Expenditures.
the expected expenditures.
The only thing that could possibly take that up higher would be any outstanding contract that we haven't already decided upon. Insurance is a big one, and we'll be getting those bids in beginning of May. So that would be one of those items that we've tried to adjust for, but until we get the real numbers, we wouldn't know exactly what those are. So
And by passing a proposed final budget, are we able to go over that amount? When we vote on the final budget? Does that make sense? If in the meantime, if we vote on the proposed final budget next week at this amount, and we find out that we are under budgeted by the final budget time to vote, can we increase that amount? Or maybe that's a question for you, Solicitor Turnbull.
Maybe the solicitor could answer, but my interpretation is until you pass that final budget, you can continue to make changes.
It can go up or down.
Right.
Okay.
I believe
Is that
that's true.
accurate?
I believe that is true, but I will verify that
Okay,
for you in
thank
the
you.
next day or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, are we comfortable putting that number in there? I mean, to do that, we have to have some kind of discussion, so.
I'm comfortable with it. I mean, moving forward, if it would have to change, it's not voting on the final budget.
I mean, we do not take a vote on this, correct? This evening to put that number in here.
No, but
Since it's not voting.
I
You just have to have consensus.
You need some direction, just
Right.
so that when
We
you're
know what to put
preparing
on
for
the
next
agenda.
week,
Right.
we can accurately reflect that
So do we
in
have-
posted agenda.
Right. Do we have anybody else that is comfortable enough putting that number on there? with the understanding that we can go up or down. And just to be clear for the public, you know, we are just looking at this now, the draft 3, so that's kind of why we're sort of taking a little bit of time to process, but. And to Dr. Pascarella's point, we are trying to be transparent so that you see that number ahead of time and that doesn't come out 24 hours ahead of time.
I'm not comfortable with it, so I'll put that out there. I would like to look at a little bit more further detail.
So there's only 7 of us here. Anybody else? So legally speaking, so this would be for you, Solicitor Turnbull. If we do not put a number in there, we cannot vote on this next week, correct?
I think you could vote on it next week, but someone would have to make a motion during the meeting with a number in it. I mean, for it to be an action item.
And if we don't, then we have to wait until the first meeting in May.
May 11th, and then is it 20 days? I didn't count. Maybe somebody said 20 days, the first meeting in June?
Right,
June.
yeah.
Is it 20 days?
Well, 20 plus, when's the meeting? 12?
June 8th. I
June
believe,
8th?
June 8th, yeah.
is the first meeting.
May,
Yeah,
is
it
it
would
May
be
11th
that.
to June 8th? Is that 20 days? It should be.
The other option could be
That's your option.
we could discuss moving the date of the June meeting up if we absolutely had to.
Business days.
Anybody else? That's only 2.
Calendar.
It's calendar, Kelsey.
Calendar, I'm sorry.
20 calendar days.
So I think you would be good. Do you agree, solicitor? I mean, if that's what you want to do, and you're going to do it on the 11th and then on the 8th.
I mean, I think there was a lot of work put into this to take a lot deeper dive into looking at the finances, and it's obviously a significant difference from last month, not last week. So I personally appreciate all of the hard work that you all did to come up with this. It's just, I guess it's just difficult to look at it quickly and make a decision. But I don't personally necessarily want to delay it either. So if we don't have a consensus enough to put a number in there tonight, then we can look everything over and make a motion next week if we would like to. The only downfall of that is that it's not put out to the public ahead of time. So I think we need a little bit more of a consensus because I've only heard from 2 so far.
So we can also keep it on the way it is, like Solicitor Turnbull said. Somebody can make a motion, or we can table it next meeting to the following meeting.
Right. But we can do that with or without the number in there, correct?
Correct.
So I am comfortable putting that number in. I'll give my opinion because I've only heard from 2. I'm comfortable putting that number in and then looking through the mounds of information before next week to determine whether to vote yes or no, or if it needs to be tabled. Anybody else?
Okay, I'm going to ask this question again, because I was always under the impression that the proposed budget number is just a proposal to put it out for public review because it has to be out there for X amount of days. That number in there can go down in the final budget, but it can't go up.
Because it's a different
That's why-
budget at that point.
So if you're just putting and I'll say it, although the 53,121,066 in there, but you continue to work on the budget because the idea is to pass the final in May, you still have those X amount of days to get that number down. Because the most important thing was being able to meet the timeline to put the budget out there for public review, correct?
And to be clear, we're talking about of these things, we're talking about expenditures. Revenue would be a different, and that is where the tax and the millage rate, whether you choose to keep it the same or make a different choice, that will go along with a completely separate and a second action at the same meeting where you adopt the budget. And so the expenditures is not, I don't believe that is particularly tied to the revenue side and the tax question, which is, I understand, is a thorny one.
Only tied in this in particular case as I see it, because prior to this draft, in order to turn in a balanced budget, you almost would have had to either use capital, figure a creative way to use capital funds, or raise taxes. Normally, you're correct, it wouldn't matter because it would just be that you would settle that with fund balance. I mean, so I agree with your statement normally. And as far as it goes, most of the time, I'm not sure that that's law, that it can't go up, Mrs. Keough. I think that's typical, though. I mean, most of the time, you're not going to bring a draft in higher. However, that could happen. I'm not sure the legality of that. I've never had it happen that way where it actually went up. And usually, if we found something later, you try to find somewhere else where you would take some of the conservative budgeting numbers that we talk about and reduce that to even it out, so that the number didn't necessarily go up. I'm not sure if there's a law to that. You would have to answer that. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sure you may not either.
I would also follow up with that I would really not be comfortable with that number increasing anyway. I would want to look to find ways to decrease things.
Right.
If something were to come in and something that's unexpected, I would go back to you to ask you to look for other areas that we can cut in. Just my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I guess, is why I am comfortable putting that number in, because I wouldn't want that number to increase, because that's putting an extra tax burden onto the community that we may not need to do. So I'm confident you guys have put a lot of time in, a lot of effort into this. I'm confident that that number will not increase.
I'll say yes too.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
So that's 3. Do we have 4 or not? Mr. Keefe, I believe you said you were not comfortable.
I think we'll be good with our timeline starting in May, so no, not at this time.
Okay. Mrs. Keough?
Which number are we looking in to put in here?
53,121.66 as the expenditure.
I would say yes to get the preliminary budget proposal out there so it meets the timeline. But again, I think we're all on the same page that, it's work in progress and it'll continue until we get to the point where we have to vote the final.
I would agree. I definitely see it as a work in progress before we get to the final budget, for sure. So I believe that's enough. Mrs. Smith, unless you would like to weigh in?
I was going to weigh in. I'm going to hold off. I'd still like to see it worked down a little bit. And my number one concern is not putting forward for a tax increase. So I'll just state that publicly.
Yeah.
So right now, no.
So we will be, sounds like there is a consensus to at least put that number in there for the agenda for next week.
Right.
Just so the public is aware, that does not mean that we are voting this evening. That's just the number that will be placed on the agenda for next week, correct?
Correct.
And then that is when that vote will take place.
Do you need 4 or
then-
5?
I think to build consensus to figure out what is going to appear, that in no way guarantees that you have 5 to pass it, which is what you would need to have. You need 5 votes to approve this next week.
That's fine.
So just to be clear again, go ahead.
All right, so then we are going to, for number 1, then we are going to add in the blank right now, the number $53,121,066 for next week. I'm sure there'll be more discussion next week on it when it becomes an actual action item.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, number 2, school district monthly bills and salaries. It's recommended to pay the monthly school district bills and salaries at the amounts indicated. Cafeteria monthly bills and salaries, it's recommended that the monthly cafeteria bills be paid in the amounts indicated. Any discussion of our normal monthly bills? Number 4, 2022-2023 Beaver County Career and Technology Center operating budget. It is recommended to approve the 22-23 Beaver County Career and Technology Center operating budget for $6,445,645. It is further recommended the board president and board secretary be authorized to execute the BCCTC resolution form. Any discussion? Number 5, service agreement renewal. It is recommended to renew the service agreement with Associated Occupational Therapy for the 22-23 school year with no increase in rates. Any discussion? That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Under athletics and public relations and steering and rules and legislative, we do not have any items on the agenda for next week at this point. As far as an address for this evening from myself, the only thing I have here is some information about graduation. So there was a public, we heard the public concerns about or wishes about having a graduation outside. And so the administration worked very hard with the committee to make that happen. So I think we talked about this last month, but there is now an actual schedule. I believe you all have a copy. Yes? So graduation will be held outside pending, weather pending, obviously. And there is an alternative plan to have it in the gymnasium with overflow in the auditorium. There are a lot of other dates that were sent out today, so if you have anybody that is affected by that, I would recommend that they check their emails and, look for that. But some highlights, May 25th, they are doing a senior walk through the schools, I believe, correct? They're going to elementary schools that day. Oh, they're meeting at, okay, it says at high school. So that is the day that they'll be coming into the elementary schools, which is always an exciting day for the elementary kids because they get to see the seniors walk through and see the accomplishments that they've had. Other than that,
I think the day of the walkthrough, is that the field day at State Street, May 25th?
no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Other than that, the BCCTC graduation date is May 27th. And then everything else is pretty much pertinent to the seniors. And Mr. King, would you mind giving us a little bit of an update on the event that's being held in May?
On May 14th at 12 o'clock, we're going to have our Ambridge Area School District Community Event. There's going to be a number of different activities going on. It's going to start off with with our Title I family engagement event, and then we're also going to have a Bridger Sports Fair. Right now we have 20 employees signed up to work the event. The number of students, we won't have an accurate count until April 29th, and we're having Fritz Lee's in Brewster's ice cream truck. So we're meeting on Wednesday to start to plan the activities.
Great, thank you very much for that. Thank you to Solicitor Turnbull, Dr. Pasquarella for your a lot of hard work on the SRO. We are very excited that there's going to be somebody in place up there. I know that a lot of the community members will be excited as well, so thank you very much for all of your hard work on that. That's all I have. Under Superintendent's report, Dr. Pasquarella.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank our State Street students. They did an excellent job today. Very proud of you. Great job, and thanks for being patient with us tonight. Appreciate that. And also like to just thank Mr. King and the entire committee who worked on, the books. That's a big decision and a lot of work that goes into that. So thanks to the teachers, Mr. King, and for his leadership, principals, and Dr. Filipowski, and everyone who else worked on that. I'm glad that we were able to get that and utilize our ESSERS funds. And other than that, hopefully we got some spring weather, enjoy some of our spring sports and some of the musical type events that are coming up. It's going to be exciting end of the school year celebrating our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Solicitor Turnbull, do you have a report this evening?
I just want to note that I do anticipate having a detention policy for a first reading for you next week, and that's a tweak to the document retention policy. So I'll circulate that to the committee, hopefully by the end of this week, and if appropriate, you will see that, and some minor changes, but that will help with some of the storage issues that we have. And the other item is just an informational item, and that is that your statement of financial interest, I'm sure most, if not all of them, are already on file with the board secretary, but the deadline is May 1st. So if you don't have one, or if you need one, please let myself or Mrs. Mueller know, and we'll get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for old and new business. Any district resident who desires to comment on any business relevant to the Ambridge Area School District should now come forward. Each person must state their first and last name and address prior to speaking. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes and can only speak once. This period for public comment prior to the standing committee reports will be limited to 1/2 hour.
Hi. My son Justin, he helped do the pledge, and when he found out he was going to get to do the pledge, he asked Mrs. Hoover if he could say a couple things about school. So he wanted to just tell you guys a couple things. He's very excited.
I think that does adjust. Okay. Welcome.
Hi.
Justin High Song. I love my school and I love my teacher and I love my friends. And I like my mom.
He just wanted to say, like he said, he loves his school and he loves his teacher, and he was excited to tell the school board and get up and talk. So that was what he wanted to tell you guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else this evening that would like to come speak? One thing I did forget to mention before, and the 3 of you are still here. I think we had other students that were here. It's really hard to see because of the lights, but I believe there were other students here. It is really great to see students come to these meetings, especially get up and speak, and especially at such a young age. It really shows a lot. I remember being in high school and coming to the board meetings, at the teacher's request and thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be a long night. And it was a wonderful experience. So I suggest highly to every student to attend as much as possible, and we love to hear from you. So other than that, I believe we are at the point that we will be adjourning. However, I am making a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I will second that.
Personnel and legal matters. Okay. Any discussion? We will call that, or do we just? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.